Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cultural Exchanges 2021. I'm Dia. My pronouns are she, they, and I am your Equality and Diversity Executive at De Montfort SU. I am so excited today as we have the wonderful Jamie Windust joining us for a chat. Jamie is a writer, public speaker, and model, amongst many other things. They've written for the likes of The Independent, Gay Times, British GQ, as well as worked with brands such as Gucci, ASOS, and Zalando, looking in on the industry from an inclusivity and accessibility purpose. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you, my love.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm enjoying that the days are getting slightly longer, but that's about it, really. It's not really too much we can do right now.
I love that we're all finding such tiny things to be joyful for at the moment. Mine is that I have none. There we go. I have nothing.
Oh, well, you're doing this with us, and hopefully this will be a joyful event.
This is my thing of the day. Yeah, sure.
Oh, thank you. I have to start with the most inevitable. We've touched on it as already. How are you finding the current lockdown period? Have you succumbed to any of the lockdown trends over the year? Like, how are you doing?
Great question. Do you know what? It's been a bit of a higgledy-piggledy one, as it were. I started in lockdown. In lockdown 1, I lived with other people. Would not recommend. And then in July, I moved out and flew the nest, as it were, and now I live solo. So I've experienced all of the lockdowns, like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, alone. It's been quite interesting. I think this one in January, from January, I know everyone's saying it, but it has been pretty tricky.
It feels a lot longer, and it's just generally colder, right?
It's just a bit shocking outside, isn't it, really? And I feel like I've got my rhythm now, but just as I got my rhythm, everything will start opening. So we'll see what happens there. We'll see.
It's always that way, isn't it? It really always is, but I'm sure we will be thriving. But let's start. Well, I need to start off with for those of you at home who may not be aware of Jamie. How would you introduce yourself and the work that you do?
First of all, I would say, how dare you? Why would you come to an event where you don't know
Exactly.
the speaker? I would I would introduce myself as so I'm currently contributing editor at Gay Times, author, model. A lot of my work focuses on, thank you very much, please boost the ego. My job kind of revolves around, has revolved around me sharing my experiences, sharing my story as a trans person, showcasing how I've used fashion and creativity to get to a point where I'm able to feel more comfortable. And then also the other kind of aspect of that is working more behind the scenes internally with fashion brands, media institutions like at Gay Times to create content that is more accessible and inclusive, and has kind of queerness and transness behind it at all times. So it's not just a big rainbow token, as it were.
You are doing some absolutely wonderful stuff, and I'll be here to be validating you for the next hour and a bit. Yeah, so don't you worry. But you have an amazing portfolio and an array of experiences under your belt at such a young age. I have to ask, like, was this always the plan, or how did you get into this career path? Has it changed along the way? Tell me a little bit about your journey into this world.
When I was younger, I actually wanted to be a firefighter. Funny.
Love that.
Love that for me. I love going to universities because and it's annoyingly cliche. And when I was at university and I have people say this, I tell them to leave. But I got into the job that I'm doing now by really almost, if it's not an inappropriate word, milking my final year. I studied fashion management and marketing. I was in a creative arts uni. And in my final year, I was asked to create just a business, any form of business that I wanted. And that was kind of my introduction to the media industry because I decided to create a magazine. I decided to then use that final year to write I'll learn how to write more professionally, stylistically, and then start pitching and try and just use my final year to get a portfolio so that when I left uni, I wasn't just sat at home like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because that is a perpetual fear, and all students have that as soon as we leave. As soon as we throw our graduation caps, we are hit with the despair of the real world. So I'd say that's how I got into the media, and then it kind of just snowballed from there. So I didn't have to start straight out of year 3. I had a little bit of a portfolio with me to keep going.
That's so amazing though, because I think one thing you just said, like, you milked through like your 3rd year. So did I. Like, I'm a law graduate and I have nothing to do with law, but my final year was like where I really got into using the university facilities, and now I'm in a position where I get to interview amazing people such as yourself. So, you know, winning. You've just released your first book, In Their Shoes, which I am currently reading, and it is a fabulous read. Honestly, it's really helping me at a time where, like, I'm going through my own gender crisis, and this is like just a fantastic read, like genuinely. Happy World Book Day as well. But this book is your personal account of navigating through the world as a non-binary person. Talk to me a little bit about the inspiration and like how you really got into like actually sitting down and saying, hey, I'm gonna make a book.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, as a writer, it's quite a pipe dream, as it were. And because I guess it's quite like a continuation. So because I'd been using my final year to create some form of portfolio, when I left university, I was able to start quite quickly in the media landscape. So I started writing freelance for the Metro. I kind of was doing quite a lot of public speaking events, panels, that type of thing. I was very much a yes person. So I was just like, yeah, I'll go there. Yeah, I'll do that. And I was just like, yes, yes, yes. And then that led to me, and I would also just caveat that with, that's not always the best thing to do. That's just what we tend to do when we start in an industry that we're new in. But I think what that led to is my wonderful publishers, Jessica Kingsley. The way in which they work is they essentially scout authors, which is really lovely, because I'd always wanted to write a book. I'd always wanted to, do that with my life, and I didn't know how that was going to kind of come about. But they approached me with a concept, and then we collaboratively worked on it together to create In Their Shoes. And I think it's such a better way to create a book. The publishing industry is so old and outdated, and a lot of it is very much you festering over an idea for years and then producing it to a publisher for them to tell you to fuck off. And what I found with this was, it was nice because we were able to work together to create what In Their Shoes became. Originally they wanted a children's / young adult book that was very guidey and very like structured as like an information guide. And I was like, do you know what? I can't do that. You can do that with someone else, but this is what I'm going to take bits of your idea and sprinkle my bits on, and then I loved it. So yeah, that's kind of how it's born.
And we're so glad for it, because it genuinely is like, it's been a fantastic read throughout, and it's a good one when I'm highlighting bits from it with a pen.
Oh yeah.
I know, is that naughty? Is that really naughty?
Would you do that with the Bible?
I plead the fifth.
Thank you very much.
But I have to say, like, as I read through your book, like, I can't help but notice there is just this like super positive, uplifting feeling that I just, like, I can't miss it. Like, as I read it, I have like just a smile on my face, which is really lovely, and thank you for that, because I think it's really, really needed. But it's this notion is something you've like spoken about in like an article for the Gay Times about being kind, and I was wondering if you could go a little bit more into that. Like, what's helped you maintain your own positivity and kindness, and what made you come to this revelation of like, hey, be kind, be nice, be happy?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's made me realize that is almost the opposite, is that the fact that we live, especially now with social media, we live in an age of like toxic positivity. We live in an age of very much this concept of ideals that are not attainable. That if you're, deeply depressed, that you can just smile through it, or if it doesn't, the positive environment that we live in doesn't allow time for intersectionality. And so what I found with my version, I guess, of positivity or kindness is that it's a one day at a time kind of thing. I'm not always positive, I'm not always kind, no one is. And I think what we need to do is we need to pick and choose our moments when we have kindness and when we aren't. And not to say that you should all just go and be rude all the time, but there's a moment for like realizing, with so many situations in our lives, could I deal with this a little bit more kindly? Could I deal with this a little bit more positively? And only we can determine that, because only we really know the intersectionalities and intricacies of our days and our lives and the people we exist for. So once I realized that positivity and kindness were very much mine to define, and were easy, and that's the thing as well, they are quite easy concepts to grasp. It was a lot easier, and I was like, everyone who's telling me to live, laugh, love can jump in the bin, because I'm gonna just be kind in ways that I know are actually helpful for people.
Fab, which I think is exactly what we need. We need a little bit more of that in the world. And yeah, like, just thank you so much for spreading that message out there. It's definitely contagious. Let's talk fashion. It's something that is extremely important to you. When did you first start experimenting with fashion and makeup? And you've spoken about it being a tool to express yourself. I was wondering if you could go a little bit more into that.
Yeah, I think it's no coincidence that my kind of exploration with fashion came at the same time as my exploration with gender identity. And at the time when I was like 16, 17, I didn't really realize what the gender identity aspect of me that was growing was. I was just very much focused on the fashion element. So it was kind of just before I moved to university, in sixth form. So my sixth form college was attached to my school. So we'd spend the whole of kind of our school life wearing these really boring uniforms. And then sixth form essentially was the first time that I was able to wear my own clothes that wasn't on a weekend. And I was like, God, there's so much choice here. There's so much opportunity. And I remember realizing that and this is quite a privileged standpoint to be in, but I never really, in myself, felt a barrier with exploring fashion. I never felt, until I experienced the outside world and other people's reactions, I never felt shame for it. I just felt kind of like curiosity and excitement. And it was only kind of realizing other people's reaction to me that made me feel some kind of way about it and made me feel negative or shameful about it. So that's why I think it's so important for me, because I always try and remember that, and as I say in the book, that kind of joy that I had with fashion when it was just my relationship, just me and fashion, having a laugh. Fashion for me is a bit of a piss take. Like, it's just fun, and I think people take it way too seriously. And it's, I still use it now. It changes, it evolves. I love it. Just realize I'm here. That's really embarrassing, isn't it? So sorry. See, fashion. Fashion.
I didn't even realize that was you. To be fair, it's really small, so you look fab now. You're also the founder of the brilliant Fruitcake magazine. It's a collection of queer stories and art for queer people by queer creators. Where did the idea of the magazine come from?
Yeah, so Fruitcake was born in my final year of university, and the summer prior, I had been asked to do a 11-week internship wherever I liked, and I started it in fashion PR. Decided that wasn't for me, and then did the final 6 weeks at Stonewall over the summer.
God, that's so cool.
Yeah, I was really shocked to get in, to be honest. And I interned there during Pride, which is obviously like a gay blessing. And it was at a time in the media where the transness and transphobia was really kind of, I wouldn't say beginning to get bad, but it was after what they call the trans tipping point. So like a lot of discussion around transness was now in the media, because of things like Caitlyn Jenner, women like Caitlyn Jenner, or like discussions around the GRA, and it was just becoming more of a discussion. And I think that's when I realized, okay, there's a massive problem with the media that I resonate with, and I've also had this great experience with queer people at Stonewall. How can I push them together? And then Fruitcake was born. Yeah, I loved it, and I was speaking about this the other day in an interview. Like, I don't have the time for it now. I don't have as much passion for it now, if I'm honest. And I look back on it as a very much a passion project, and I loved doing it. It wasn't for any form of financial gain, or it was just because I noticed that there are so many queer creatives that don't get published because of either outdated publishing standards, or they're not famous enough, or white supremacy, or all of these things, or they're just not given platforms. Who knows if it will continue and come back? Probably. But at the moment, I quite like looking back at it as like almost like a relic of my journey into where I am now.
Definitely. Is there a way for people at home who haven't been able to read them? Are they still able to check out is it 4 previous issues?
Great question. We've got 3 previous issues. Yeah. Unfortunately, no. I'm going to be honest here. There is
Well, if you've missed it, you missed it, guys. But you also actually segued me perfectly into my next question about, like, Fruitcake was an amazing platform to showcase queer talent on, and it is great to see how much social media can be used as a tool to help find these creatives, and put a spotlight on their talents. Who are some queer, gender non-conforming, non-binary, trans creators that you think everyone should be following right now?
Great question. Obviously me. No, do you know what? You can if you want, but it's quite dull on my Instagram at the moment. I think that social media was the first way that I found people who were trans and gender non-conforming. So people like Travis Alabanza, people like in the States like Janet Mock, India Moore.
Love her.
Yeah, like absolute legends. And then just not to like downplay people, but just like going through like almost like a rabbit hole, like a wormhole of just like going through people's social media feeds, and just if you see pronouns in the bio, it's going to be a good ride. So you just follow them, and just seeing loads of trans and queer non-binary people just like living their life and having a bit of a laugh, and not necessarily having to be like super famous or have anything that they desperately want to say, but just seeing them like have a good time, I think is my favorite thing. So just having like a nice close-knit community online is for me really important, because social media is a detriment to us, but also a benefit. And if you can cultivate it in a way where you have safety in some way, I think that's really important.
Absolutely. And I think you raised a really good point. I think social media, especially for me and our generation and the generation beyond us, wow, that hurts to say, but for the younger queer people coming, especially as we're coming into uni and all that, it's actually really hard to find that representation in mainstream media. Like, it is so hard to do. So sometimes falling into that rabbit hole is exactly what you need. And I know 16-year-old Dia needed exactly that. And it's something that is so powerful and impactful if you do it in the right and safe way. And yeah, guys, put your pronouns in your bios. It's how you'll get noticed by Jamie Windust.
You'll get a follow from me, even if they're he, him. I'll probably follow you.
Do I get a follow? Thanks. I'll just pretend you said yes anyway. Have you been watching RuPaul's Drag Race?
Unfortunately,
UK.
Yes.
How are you finding it? Are you?
Yeah. What am I doing here? You're keeping me from it. I'm joking.
I know. I'm literally so devastated. I've asked all my roommates to like hold off.
Yeah. No spoilers anywhere, please, in the comment section. I have been watching. I do. Have I enjoyed it? No, yeah, I have really enjoyed it. I'm not sure. I do enjoy it more than the American one. I think
Definitely.
this series has a lot more character to it and a lot more diversity in a way. Um, the discussions around transness, discussions around non-binary identities with Ginny and Bimini, and yeah, it's nice to see that. It also feels the way that they have these conversations is very British. Like it's emotional, but it's still very like, oh yeah, I'm non-binary. Isn't that funny? Whereas in America, the American one, they'll like have like a whole like suspense themed dramatic moment with like
Absolutely. Hey, at least if it was Bollywood, they'd be like 10 minutes focusing on like one scene, just like taken over and over. So
really dramatic looks, like dramatic music.
honestly, the drama, we're here for it. But you actually like really touched on the question I was going to ask. Jamie, you are a perfect guest to have because you're on the ball. Like, what am I even here for? Just here for a good time, really. But yeah, in this season of Drag Race UK, we're able to witness a really emotional and raw conversation between Bimini and Ginny about identifying as non-binary. They talk about the toll that can come with being out because of the world we live in and how they treat non-binary, gender non-conforming, and trans people. And I think this conversation goes hand in hand with something that you've mentioned already and in your book. And it's the importance of non-binary joy and how people deserve to do more than just survive. They deserve to thrive. But what does non-binary joy mean for you? And how do you see it? And how do you portray it? And how do you push it out into the world?
I think for me, the joy of it is almost the joy is the mundanity of it, like almost the boringness of it. Like one of the best projects that I worked on with Gay Times when I first joined last year was this amazing photo series called Trans Love, and it was just I really wanted to just capture through the power of Zoom and a camera how how trans people and gender non-conforming and non-binary people in relationships are no different to anyone else in the ways in which their life is actually quite dull. I wanted to show people like taking the bins out, people having dinner, people just like sat
I
reading.
love that. I literally adore that.
So I mean, like, because I think there's some massive expectation or presumption that trans people have this like we either have a really, really awful life and that or we have a brilliant life, but you don't really ever see the brilliance. And I think there's no that you can't live on such a binary spectrum of like your life's either great or shit. I was like, I just want to show that we are able to exist and have normal lives because you don't really see that. I for one can attest to the fact that a lot of my opportunities in my media career at the beginning and still now come from this idea of people either wanting me to showcase like awful trauma or I'm like intensely celebrated for about 2 seconds in the fashion industry. Like there's no in between. And I think for me, the joy is the reality of like of the existence. It's the reality of we don't always think about our gender, but we are forced to because other people bring it to our door. And yeah, the joy is just of being a bit boring. Like plot twist, spoiler, I'm fucking boring, but that's great because aren't we all?
Exactly. And paparazzi will be out there watching you take your bins out next time and taking some photos.
Fingers
It's the life we want to live. But you've just spoken like a little bit about like how is it for you dealing with the ups and downs of it all in that like especially you're a public figure. There's a lot of media attention on you, especially at certain times. How do you deal with it? How do you what's your way of managing that pressure, that stress?
I still don't really. I still have quite a lot of imposter syndrome about my position. I still don't really believe it because I'm just, like I said, quite a desperate housewife. I don't know. There have been. I think if I look back on like the difficult times, like for me, Pride, the joy of Pride, since it's become almost like a work month, has gone. and I do find Pride really difficult because it's so intense. And I almost get like the Pride blues after Pride, not in necessarily a way of because I missed the parade, but because like I will have such an intense amount of work on.
And then it's just
In July, and then come August, they're like, "Who are you?" Which I've noticed over the past few years, and to try and alleviate that crash, is I've tried to continue the relationships with brands, especially fashion brands and beauty brands, throughout the year, so that quite self-serving for them. They appear better because they're talking about this message for longer, and also so that they can try and do things like that more accurately with representation and actually making it count rather than just coming into June and July and throwing something out. So that's how I manage the highs and lows. Oh, telephone. Is I just try and make it as long or I try and put longevity in things that I'm doing.
which we'd love to hear. I'm actually going to ask you a question from our private chat, just because I think it fits in perfectly with this. Anyone at home, please feel free to send in some comments and questions. We are noting them down, and I'll definitely leave some time at the end for you your questions to be answered. But we've had one here in. Do you think there's a threat of commercialization when looking at Pride?
I think there definitely is, and I think it's no longer a threat. It's just it's happened, and it's happening. The thing that I find with this is why I was so happy last year when Pride was off, because I was like, we do not have to get into the discourse around Pride because it happens every year. We have the same conversations, and not to shame the person who asked this question. Very valid question. I just think with commercialization happens with Pride. It depends on the thing that I have to realize, and I have realized with my career especially, is because a lot of it is quite commercial, is that brands, the images of brands, social media representation, TV film representation are all just one part of the system. And I think what tends to happen with commercialization is when people put this idea of commercial representation on a pedestal and they say this is the most important thing we need to strive for in our community. We need trans people on the front of ASOS. It's like, well, you don't. It's a nice thing to have, and yes, it's good for representation. But when you pedestal it as the most important thing, that's when it becomes a threat, because that's our eyes are almost
negating the others, right?
Yeah, it's almost like our eyes fall off the ball, as it were. Yes, that was a football reference. We it's not important. There's a level of importance to representation, but like I say, it's all part of the same system, and it's all part of a massive way in which we can live authentically and have fun. So I think if you focus so much of your energy on whether or not or who's in the Pride Parade, you can almost get distracted slightly. I think there's an important discussion around what Pride should be, who should be in Pride, and that's up for us to make noise to the organisers of Pride. Like, for example, Pride in London, every year they always get shouted at because they either don't have enough diversity within their lineup, or they have the police there all the time. Both very valid issues that need to be discussed. But those issues don't get discussed because we're moaning about HSBC being at the back. It's like, well, focus.
Yeah.
Focus.
Absolutely. There is that tendency, once the media spotlight's one thing, and it's the whole element of dog whistle politics that is just coming into all of it, which unfortunately is so unescapable. And I guess it's our duty as concerned citizens to ensure that we are looking the right way and we are paying attention to the right thing. because this popped up, I am going to ask you one more question on Pride, if that's okay. And this is from Laura. Hi, Laura. How you doing? What are your thoughts on like the ticketing of Pride? I know Manchester sells loads of tickets, and like 2 years ago there was a big controversy around actually loads of LGBTQ plus people didn't even get tickets to go to Pride. So do you think there's that element of gatekeeping? Is it needed? Is it?
I think there is.
Us?
There is an element of gatekeeping with it, but for example, today Manchester Pride announced that they are doing £7.50 tickets for people on low incomes. So prides are adapting. I think what I'd like to see is, for example, Pride in London, Manchester Pride, like very successful, very brilliant. The thing with those prides is they have large sponsors, and they have a lot of money behind them. So what they do is they attract us with these huge names, there's these huge stars that are going to perform fine. And if you're going to put on some form of show like that, or you're going to put on some form of big event, why not ticket it? As long as part of that money is going to charity, or part of that money is going somewhere good, you're doing a service. What I think needs to happen though is that this money is distributed down to regional prides, down to local prides, down to village prides, because what happens is, thank you. Let's get my hammer and sickle out. Is those prides then don't have as much resources, therefore don't get as many people to go. They can't get like engaging events to happen, because all of the attention is on, am I going to Manchester, am I going to Brighton, am I going to London? Which is fine. If you want to go, but there needs to be redistribution of wealth, everyone.
Absolutely. And I guess this is my time to remind anyone, if you guys are in Leicester next year, remember in September we have our very own Leicester Pride, and Touchwood, we have De Montfort, which funds a lot of Pride, and we have the privilege to do it. But it's a really nice little event, and please make sure you come along, because it's always so fun. Hope to see you there next time. Front and center, we have the best fairground rides.
Thank you. I will be on the Helter Skelter.
We love that. To be fair, I would not do anything more than that. I am petrified of anything and everything. Part of your work, and you've just spoken about it in your previous answer, involves looking at the creative industries and analysing their inclusivity and accessibility for trans and gender non-conforming people. Could you give us a little bit more insight into what it is you're actually like looking out for, and highlight what you think needs to be done by these industries to really get to peak is really far, but to at least get us off the stepping stone of becoming more inclusive?
Yeah, I think what my kind of process is with brands and institutions, or when I work with Gay Times or anywhere that asks me to do something, is I try and turn that opportunity into a time for consultancy. So I'm such a Alan Sugar. No, it's because what I noticed was, like, with pride activations or pride campaigns, these types of things, what would happen is, lazy white women would come in, go on Instagram or Google like top LGBT influencers in the UK, and then they pick all those people, and then they just ask them to do something, look nice on camera, and then they'd be done for another year. And what I found was that is good in part. Like I said before, representation to some degree is important, but why are we stopping there? And I think to take a nod to your question, just to get off the stepping stone is to really begin with the team behind the project. So I look at, I ask companies like, how many trans people do you employ? Do you have do you have pronouns in your email signatures? Do you foster a work environment that accepts and allows trans people to work? Because if you don't, A, your message that you're putting out there is going to be false, and B, how are you expected to tackle such issues such as trans representation if you don't have a trans inclusive workplace? So I almost try and work backwards to make the people and the space inclusive, get them thinking about it, and then when it comes to Pride, or when they want to do activations that include trans or queer people, one massive thing I say to them is, if you don't know, that's fine. Either don't do it or hire people from the community that will know how to do it. Because there's no point in you trying to fumble your way through a pride campaign that would clearly just be for clout and financial gain if you don't know what you're doing. And we've seen that time and time again. So yeah, that's what I look for in those circumstances. But it's not easy. Brands and people are very defensive. But yeah.
Yeah, they really are. And I think key word there is hire people. Don't ask them to volunteer their time, and make sure we're paying people for the amazing work that they are doing. Please remember that, everyone. In terms of, I have to ask you, just because I'm DSU and I have to represent in my own way, is that the same advice you'd give to me as the E&D executive, like when we're looking to create our strategy for the union, or do you think there are some nuances that we need to look at specifically as a higher education institution?
Yeah. No. Yeah. No, one of the biggest things I say in these situations when I'm consulting with line managers, head of departments, or people in the SU, for example, is you personally have to be able to acknowledge and empathize with the communities that you want to speak for first. There's no way that you can suddenly almost put on professional inclusivity. It has to come from within you first as a human being, as just a person. So, and I've had quite a lot of criticism about this before. I remember once I did a talk at Google, and I got for the first time actually ever, they sent me an email with like feedback. So okay, sure. And I just got told that I was really angry, and I made everyone feel really bad in the room, and I was like, great, love it. Because I basically tried to employ that narrative of, you can't do anything inclusively in your workplace unless your personal life, your life as a human being has that energy to it, has that inclusivity and kindness. And I did that by showcasing the ways in which trans people are degraded in the media, in representation, through legislation, and they were just like really defensive. And I think, yeah, in SUs as well. I know, for example, in my old university, we didn't have an SU, which is really sad. And we, these types of discussions would come up, and it would be kind of like non-student straight lecturers or heads of the uni, chairs, principals, whatever they're called, being like, oh, I think we should do this. And it's like, well, you have no idea what you're doing. So I think that advice definitely is impactful for people, especially in uni, especially in workplaces, in your family. Like, it has to start from you. You can't professionally be an ally. You have to just be an ally.
Absolutely. And I think it's a very telling point if you leave from a conversation feeling bad instead of feeling, what should we do next? I think it's very telling of who you are as a company and as an institution. So please, guys, if you are being told to like be better and do better, don't take it as a personal thing. Take it as motivation to make sure people aren't being left out and feeling excluded. And I, just because I have to, I'm sorry, Cultural Exchanges team. It is election week at DSU, and it is the final of my term, so like I am gone. So please make sure that the next equality and diversity executive is someone that you feel confident to represent your views and get that in place. I think it's so important. And if any of my successors are listening to me now, please make sure you go ahead and listen to what's being said here and take it on board. Love you. Thanks. Bye.
I second that message.
Thanks. I actually, it leans in perfectly with my next question. I'm like just so ahead of the game, obviously. We are getting to the end of our time, and I want to make sure we have time for questions. So I will speed up a little bit. But I want to get a little bit closer to home and talk about university. Like, uni is a weird and wonderful time for so many people, and I think it's for many people, it's like the first real chance that you get to start exploring parts of your own identity. Like for myself, like I'm Indian. I come from like a background with a Hindu mum, Sikh dad, and it was really interesting for me in that I felt so closeted. And then when I came to uni, I've had the time of my life. Like I've spent 5 years here, and I think I've really like the person I was 5 years ago to the person I am now. I've really tried to like find myself and have a wonderful girlfriend, a wonderful dog, and all that good stuff. But that's only come from like exploring at university.
Mm.
Um, am I right in thinking that university was that kind of time and that pivotal time for you as well?
Yeah, massively. I grew up in Dorset, in a very kind of white kind of. It's one of those towns where it's like middle class on one side, poor on the other. And I was kind of in the council house side, just kind of bobbling away. And yeah, when I left, I I was so eager, like so eager, and it's weird because when I talk about that, I didn't necessarily I had like a bad time in my town. I didn't have a bad family situation. I just had like, you know, bullying, kind of like claustrophobia from being at school the whole time. And university was my chance to explore that in a completely different way. I was able to almost be like anonymous for the first time. Not that I was famous when I was 12, but like, um,
There's
I
so many other people around you that are going through the same thing, right?
yeah, and also like these people don't know you. They don't know your baggage. They don't know what happened to you at school that might have been awful. They don't need to know. You can almost like start a new life, which is really fun. And I was, as a creative arts uni, I had just started in the past few years before exploring fashion. And yeah, it was my chance to just do whatever I wanted. Autonomy for the first time. Brilliant.
Amazing. It's super, super liberating.
Mm.
But yeah, actually, what tips or words of wisdom would you pass on to our students, especially the LGBTQ plus students who might be struggling at this moment? I think especially during lockdown, we've been speaking about it a lot. We are a university that has a really large minority ethnic population, and actually, if you are stuck at home during lockdown, this is a really difficult time if you're not out. So
Mm.
what tips, what words of wisdom do you have?
I think, yeah, definitely. And I think lockdown, there's been a lot of discussion around how lockdown has been great for some people, not so great for some people. And I think it's really important, especially for the queer community, to acknowledge that, and students, as a student body and as students in this time, it's been incredibly difficult. And again, if you merge those two things, it's just absolutely astronomical. Advice would be find your tribe. And that doesn't have to, when people say that to me, I'm always like, fuck off, I don't care for people. But like, also tribe, that's quite a bad word, I do apologize. But I'd say your community, your group of people, it doesn't have to be a huge group of people. You could, there's such a, what I found was there was such a presumption to find your queer chosen family in nightlife, in drinking, in like all these ways that students do. And I was never like that. I never went to freshers. I stayed in my room. I was like, I will not be going to a foam party. I do not understand the concept. And I found that difficult because I couldn't find my people. But there is always a way, especially if you do through your passions, through your course, just through social media. Just try to find, even if it's like one or two like-minded people, especially if you're at home in lockdown, especially if you're ostracized from people that you may know that on campus at uni that are your chosen family. And just keep in touch. Keep in touch. There's never enough. I think often we just like worry what other people are going to think if we get in touch all the time. It's like, babe, just get in touch, have a chat, have a ring.
Absolutely. And if you are one of those students at home that's kind of listening to this and is thinking, how can I just know, please, please, please know that at the very least, if all else goes to utter shite, sorry, DMU, is like you have myself, you have Laura, you have Aisha, and the other executive teams. Like we are here for you, and my entire job and duty is like I'm getting paid to serve you guys as students, and what an amazing job it is. Like it's the best thing I could have ever asked for. So please reach out to us. We're all our details on the SE website, one click, and you can send me a DM, send me an email, whatever you want, and it will just be us. And I just want you guys to feel as safe as possible. So please, please, please. But actually, we have time for my final question. I've actually timed this perfectly because I am so amazing, obviously. But my final question before we move on to the people in the public chat is, you've been campaigning for an X option in passports, as well as for people outside of the gender binary to self-identify on the 2021 census. What can we do as participants watching this to help fight this and ensure that non-binary identities aren't erased anymore?
Yeah, so I campaigned with the passports, and I actually got my census letter yesterday, and I haven't opened it because I've tried to avoid, again, discourse around the census. I heard it on the radio this morning, and they were like, people are allowed to identify, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, this isn't news. Just like, let people do what they want. It's a census, no one cares. With the campaign around passports, that's one of my biggest kind of moments of growth, I think, and learning, because I started it from a very personal place. I couldn't get a passport. I knew other trans non-binary people that struggled to get documentation, and I started this campaign. What I learned through the campaign was that, yes, this is an important issue for some, and some people will benefit from this, but also a lot of people won't. A lot of people actually see this as a negative moment. Asylum seekers, people who are struggling with their identity, people who don't want the government to know their identity for security reasons. These groups of people do not need or want that option. And that was a real learning moment, because I was like, I'm learning in real time, like most people, but I'm also quite learning publicly, which can be quite difficult sometimes. But yeah, I think there's still a case. If you want one, you should be able to have one. But I think looking back now, I don't regret the campaign, but I think I'm in a much better place now with the information that I have around the intersectionalities around X passports, because it's not all cupcakes and roses when it comes to the government.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with me, because I've been educated in just these couple of minutes, and I think it is so important to acknowledge and accept that we do kind of learn on the job and as we go along, and it can be really difficult, like exploring through the nuances. And there's definitely been times where I've kind of sat back and thought, oh, hey, probably should have taken a different route, or probably should have focused my energy here. So I really, really appreciate you kind of discussing that. But thank you so much. They're kind of all my questions, and it's been an absolute joy. So comment section, now is your time. I think we'll start off with one from Laura, the lovely Laura. Do you think that your upbringing impacted your opinions on gender?
Yeah, I think I didn't have an expansive upbringing in terms of, trans inclusive knowledge, or even at school, we didn't have any discussions around transness or gender identity. And I'm still only 12, so that was quite recent. And yeah, I never had, my upbringing was fine. But I didn't have, I had support from my parents. I was allowed to do things like dance and like piano and it's like singing and choir. So things that may be like, feminine. So I never really had much disapproval there. They had a lot of kind of fear of what that could mean, or fear of how I could be treated in those environments. Fine, they're parents, that's their job. But I think it didn't necessarily impact my opinions. It just made me I didn't think about gender as a child. And that's because generally because I didn't have the knowledge, didn't have the language to understand that there was an option to be neither male nor female. So yeah, thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Laura. I've got one from Amber, which is just actually really interesting to me. So the Netflix documentary Disclosure, I'm sure you will have heard of it, or if you haven't, what are your thoughts on it? And beyond your thoughts, is there anything else you would recommend that we watch over lockdown, educational or just pure binge-worthy TV?
I think I haven't actually watched Disclosure purely because I have to be in the right headspace to watch it, because I think it's if anyone
It's
doesn't
really
know,
heavy hitting.
yeah, so it's about the kind of media depictions, TV, film of trans people and how that impacts the real world. And I think, yeah, like I say, I've seen clips of it where they were speaking about Eddie Redmayne playing the trans woman in that film where he plays the trans woman.
The Danish girl?
There we go. 1 point. And they made a really interesting point, one of the people on that, about how, this idea that trans people should be played by trans people is not just because of the acting skills, or not just because of the story, or not because that these people are going to have a better understanding. It's because it perpetuates this idea that trans women are men in society, because you'll think of the Danish girl and you won't think of a trans woman in that role. You'll think of Eddie Redmayne. It brings it back to a man. Yeah, has lots of discussions like that. Check it out. I might watch it after Drag Race.
Well, if you do, let us know what you think. Are there any TV shows that you're watching more generally? I mean, I've literally binged all of Keeping Up with the Kardashians and all of Criminal Minds since January lockdown. So
interesting. What have I watched recently? I watched all of Line of Duty, Clown. I watched
seen that yet?
Desperate Housewives from start to finish.
Love.
And I'm now doing Ugly Betty. I literally got Disney Plus just to watch Ugly Betty.
All the things to get Disney Plus for, and you've chosen Ugly Betty.
I'm gonna have to admit,
no shame in, but
you could count this as an exclusive, but I've never seen a classic Disney film. Hence why I've now got Disney Plus. I've not seen The Lion King. I've not seen Little Mermaid. I've not seen Beauty and the Beast. God knows what they are. But
well, DMU exclusive. Oh my god. Well, I'm really glad A, you have Disney Plus now, and B, Laura Flowers isn't the one conducting the interview, because I think she'd be sobbing. Love you, Laura.
Is she a Disney gal?
Laura is a Disney gal through and through. Her folder is the most cutest thing ever. It is a black leather-bound Mickey Mouse folder.
I'm so
and
sorry.
It is really cute, to be fair.
I will allow you to leave if I've upset you.
I don't think Laura ever would. But each their own. MCU marathon, Marvel, your kind of thing. Just say it. Just break my heart.
I've never seen any of them either. I've never seen Star Wars. I've never seen any Spider-Mans.
That's okay.
Marvel.
That's okay,
Marvel.
Jamie.
The only words that I understand as Marvel is when you look at something with beauty. You're like, oh, that's nice. I'm marveling at that.
Me watching Wanda Maximoff for like every Friday.
Although I am WandaVision.
Oh, please. WandaVision is okay, to be fair, the first 2 episodes are like really boring, like I have to say it, but it gets really, really good after that, and it is so Amber has just messaged, I can see the pain in Thea's eyes. You see nothing, Amber, you see nothing. It is a really good show though, so everyone watch it. And we have a question here from Anna. What has your experience been like modeling? Have agencies been inclusive?
Clang. Yes, my initial start into the industry was with an agency called Ugly, and they were not inclusive, and they annoyingly the first job they ever put me on, this might interest you, was an extra in Fantastic Beasts. No.
Yeah.
Is it because it's J.K. Rowling?
Yeah, I mean, and I heard you talking about your experience there. It's like how.
Yeah, and that was a bit shocking, because it was my first job in the industry. I was basically cast to look like a weird alien, or like a group of like different looking people were cast because they look different, and it was not gender inclusive in any way. It was not the modeling that I wanted to do. So I left Ugly, and went straight to the agency that I'm with now, who are called Crumb. And what drew me to them was because they, they categorize their models as male and female, but they also have, they're the only board in the UK to have a non-binary board. God, popular.
Popular.
And it's Laura. And they categorize their models and they call them humans, which is quite like kitsch and funny, but like they got me. So I've been with them for nearly 4 years, and they are wonderful. And there are a lot of agencies that are growing to be more inclusive like that. So I would recommend anyone. If I can be a model, come on. If I can model for Gucci, anyone can, because I am a
I love that, and I'm so glad that there is that rise in more inclusive agencies. It's what we need to see. It's not a want, it's a need. So get on it, guys. I'm really talking as if like everyone is watching me right now, and I'm just talking to the world, but we move.
We are.
We have another question in the private chat. What has been the proudest moment in your career so far? What do you see being next for you?
This talk itself has been.
Thanks. Don't make me cry. I've been like, I've spent like the past 7 hours just like shaking. Like, I can't believe I'm about to interview Jamie Windust. This is like the peak of my career.
No, as I've said many a time, I'm proud of shit. I think my biggest achievement or the thing that I loved doing, that I got the most gratitude and kind of growth from, was working with TEDx London, doing my TED Talk with them in 2019, because it was such a bizarre process. Like, they asked me to do it in person. So they this random woman emailed me and was like, "Hi, I'm from TED. I'd love to come and have a coffee." And I was like, fine. And then she was like, because you never really get good news in person. She was like, we want you to come and do a talk. And I was like, right. Okay.
Was that daunting?
Yeah, because I knew where it was. It's in this huge venue in London, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to say? But they really coached me through it. I spent like 3-4 months rehearsing, practicing, choreographing the whole thing. And they've just been a real family. They're the first work environment I've had where it's a real family. And I was lucky enough to come back with them this year to host their event, which was last month. And all of the talks are actually out today. So if you want some inspirational talks, they're all out today. And I interviewed some speakers and I hosted, and it was just really fun. And that's my proudest achievement, because it's work, but it's not. It's more than that. It's a community. It's a lovely kind of friendship group of people.
That is so cool and so fantastic. And yeah, guys, please make sure you do check them out. And if you're a student that wants to get involved with TEDx, know that we have like a part of the DSU, like we have a TEDx Society, which is so cool, right? So cool. So please look into that and get involved. And who knows, maybe you'll be talking where Jamie once spoke. You never know.
Come and take my place. Be in my shoes.
Oh, maybe it'll be me. No, just kidding. I could never.
Yes, absolutely. When you become Prime Minister.
I cannot do that, unfortunately. In this world, no. But it has been an absolute joy, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, having this conversation. Thank you, Claire. I have also loved this chat so much, and a massive thank you to DMU and the Cultural Exchanges team and ITMS and everyone who's been behind this in supporting this and making this go ahead. I think for me this has been one of the best events I've ran, so thank you on a personal perspective, and thank you.
You've been. Do you know, I did one the other day where people was asking me questions. They were like, okay.
Was that with another university by any chance? Yeah, I watched it. I was a bit underwhelmed.
Dire. This has been a hoot.
Thea. Sorry.
Oh no, I was saying dire as in like it was.
Oh, that Dire. Not to worry. Do you know what? It's because everyone calls me Dire, so I'm just so used to it.
Dire Straits. No, dear. You're getting a follow. You get a follow. You get a follow.
Thank you so much. I feel so so blessed. But this has been an absolute joyful way to spend an hour. Thank you so much, Jamie, and thank you so much for tuning in. Please check out the Cultural Exchanges website. There's one more day, if I'm correct, of the festival, and check out the events. And hopefully, I will catch you guys soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.